High functioning, but barely holding it together. Hey loves, welcome back to another episode of Sassy Speaks, and I'm your girl Sassy. I just want to thank everyone for coming back to listen to your girl just ramble about anything and everything and just freely give my unsolicited opinion. I enjoy talking to you all week after week. So, those that are new, welcome. And please know that this is a safe space. And to those who have been rocking with me since the beginning, hey, boo. Thank you for coming back. So, today we are going to talk about mental health. This is something that I hold dear to my heart because I personally do struggle with mental health because it is just simply a lot and life is a lot. No, I'm not crazy to where I'm out here trying to murder or just acting out or being unstable and all that stuff. That's not what all mental health is about. But I do deal with just everyday living as far as situations because my life is just a lot going on and I have had to deal with a lot in the past few years, honestly. But these last 2 or 3 years have been, I can't say what I really want to say, but fill in the blank. So I do believe that sometimes you do need to take medication. I do believe in therapists and psychiatrists and all that good stuff. And it's not all bad. Sometimes when people say those things, people are like, oh my gosh, you have the plague. If you know how many times that the medication or the therapy or the psychiatrist has saved people's lives, you will look at it differently. And I'm just saying that generally and of course playful, but seriously, mental health is a big thing that I don't think we talk about enough. And I feel like at one point it was big in the celebrity ring and people would do crazy things or say crazy things and they're like, oh, well, I'm struggling with my mental health. And then that was a pass. However, I think people were using that term very loosely and just as a cover up when you have people, everyday people, that just struggle doing their everyday task, right? And depression and anxiety is real. And even if you haven't been clinically diagnosed, there are sometimes people that show signs of depression and anxiety that may not be fully clinically diagnosed, but you do hold the signs and symptoms. So that is what we're going to talk about. Let's talk about the version of you that says, I'm good, and then goes home and stares at the wall for 2 hours. Because some of y'all aren't okay. You're just functioning. And that's real. That is real. Functioning isn't healing. Let's talk about it. You're going to work every day. You're answering texts. And you're showing up. But mentally, you're exhausted. It's not that you're lazy. You're not drained. You're not unmotivated. You're just overwhelmed. Life is lifing. And you're not okay. You're just managing. And just because you're handling it does not mean it's not heavy. You know, you ever go through the whole day checking inboxes, completing tasks, responding to people, and then sit down at the end of the day like, what did I even do today? Because you were there, but you weren't really there. And you're doing everything you're supposed to, but mentally, you're exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. You laugh because it's automatic. You say, I'm good, before anybody finish asking, and you keep moving because slowing down feels dangerous. Because the moment you slow down, everything you've been avoiding starting to get loud. So instead, you stay busy, you stay productive, you stay available, you stay distracted, and you call that being okay. No, that's coping. That's a survival with a schedule. That's pain with good time management. And some of y'all have mastered looking fine. You show up polished, get things done, be dependable, but inside, you're running on empty and calling it discipline. So let's talk about that for a second. You've convinced yourself that because you're still functioning, you must be fine. But functioning doesn't mean you're healed. It means you've learned a way to carry it. And carrying it is not the same as dealing with it. Managing your emotions, managing your stress, managing your triggers. This is what we tell ourselves, but not actually facing any of it. And here's the part people don't like. If you never slow down enough to feel it, you'll never slow down enough to heal it. So let's talk about the silent struggle. This part right here is for the ones who don't look like they're struggling. Don't look like what you've been through. The ones who laugh the loudest, the one everybody leans on, the ones who don't feel safe enough to fall apart, the ones who show up anyway, the ones who get it done. You're the reliable one, the strong one, the I got it person. And because of that, people assume you're okay. You ever notice how the strong friend never gets asked if they're okay? Yeah, we need to talk about that. Everyone checks on the one who breaks down. Nobody checks on the one no one checks on the one that's holding it together. We're going to let that sit right there. And it's not always because people don't care. Sometimes it's because you've made struggling look so good, effortless. You ever notice how people only worry when you break down? But as long as you're holding it together, you must be fine, right? But what people don't see is how heavy it is to be the strong one. You don't feel safe enough to fall apart. You don't feel comfortable being vulnerable. You don't even know how to ask for help because you're the one that people go to. So instead, you carry it silently. You deal with it privately, and you process it alone, and you tell yourself, I'll be okay. But let's be real. Just because you're quiet about it doesn't mean it's not hurting you. Some of y'all normalize suffering in silence because you don't want to be a burden or because you don't think anyone would understand anyway. And that right there, yeah, that's the silent struggle. You're surrounded by people, but still feel alone. You're loved, but still feel unseen. You're needed, but not supported the same way you support others. And eventually, that kind of silence starts to feel like isolation. And here's the truth nobody says out loud. Being strong one is a role, not a personality. And if you never step out of that role, you'll keep suffering in ways nobody notices. And if I'm being honest, I used to think being the strong one means that I didn't need support until I realized I just didn't know how to receive it. Yeah. And again, I'm saying y'all, but I got the mirror right here looking back at me. I promise you. You can't heal what you won't admit. Admitting it is the first step, right? And this is where things get uncomfortable because some of us normalize stress like it's personality, call burnout being busy, call emotional shutdown peace. Nope, that's avoidance with good PR. You're not at peace. You just stopped feeling. And what is a world where you don't feel? So let's just be honest because healing sounds real cute until it requires you to tell the truth. Not the version you tell your friends, not the version you post online, the real version. Some of y'all keep saying you want peace, but you're avoiding the very things disturbing it. You say you're over it, but you still react to it. You say it doesn't bother you, but it still shows up in your attitude. You say you moved on, but your patterns say otherwise. And again, here's the part people don't like. You cannot heal what you keep renaming. Wow. You can call it just how I am when it's really unaddressed hurt. You can call it protecting my energy, or that's what we all say now, protecting my energy, protecting my peace, when it's actually avoidance. You can call it I don't care anymore, when deep down you still do. That's not growth. That's hiding with better vocabulary. Some of y'all aren't confused. You're just avoiding clarity. Because clarity requires action. Clarity requires accountability. Clarity requires change. And if we're being real, admitting the truth means you can't keep doing what you've been doing. And that's the part that makes people uncomfortable. So instead of admitting, you distract, you minimize, and you justify. Ooh, that justifying is killing me. You tell yourself, it wasn't that bad. I've been through worse. I'll deal with it later. Yeah, but let's talk about why you have to tell yourself those things. Now, I'm going to put a pin right there. And I'm going to circle back to that later. So let's just keep moving. I don't want to get off topic. But later turns into longer. And longer turns into patterns. And patterns turn into your life. And now you're sitting here wondering why the same things keep happening. But you never actually face the root of it. Let me say it clearly. You cannot heal something you refuse to acknowledge. Because healing starts with honesty. Not perfection, not having it all figured out, just honesty. And that honesty, it might sound like I'm not over that. That hurt me more than I admitted. I keep choosing things that aren't good for me. I'm tired, for real, this time. And once you say it, now you can actually do something about it. But until then, you're not healing. You're just avoiding it in different ways. Now I'm going to come back to my pen. Why do we keep doing things that take us back to where we don't want to be? Why do we keep repeating the same patterns? Why do we keep talking to that same person? Why do we keep going to that place? Now, me, again, I'm talking to myself and I'm being very transparent here. I have several funerals in my head daily. What I mean about that is I have no problem cutting things and people off that I feel are disturbing my peace. Everybody can't do that. And even though I've cut that person off, that doesn't mean that I'm not dealing with the trauma or the triggers or not being okay. I just don't need them in my space while I'm healing. And that's okay. And you have to find your own way to cope with what is happening. And it doesn't look the same for everybody. And some people, they can still smile in their face and still deal with it. But for me, that's just not it. And if you are not adding something to me, then what are we really doing here, right? So we want to be accountable for things that we're doing. And we want to be able to hold people accountable for what they're doing. But we can't hold them accountable if we're not holding ourselves accountable. It's not always them. We have to look at ourselves because, yeah, they may be doing A, B, and C, and D, but then in the same sense, you're allowing it. People can only do what you allow them to do. And I'm not saying that this is easy. Every situation is just not easy to walk away from. You might have finances tied up. You might have business tied up. It might be a work situation and you can't just up and leave. I get that. But we have to find ways to protect ourselves in situations that we may not be able to just leave. And you have to find out what that looks like to you. So let's move on. Triggers, trauma, and I thought I was over that. Let's be honest, healing isn't linear. You can be good for months and then something small hits you sideways. A smell, a song, a memory, a situation that feels a little too familiar. And suddenly you're right back there. Healing doesn't mean it never hurts again. It means it doesn't control you anymore. Stop allowing things to control you. And the first thing you think is, why am I reacting like this? I thought I was over this. Why is it still affecting me? Let me say this clearly. You're not crazy. You're triggered. And triggers, they don't mean you're weak. They mean something in you still needs care. Because healing doesn't erase what happens. It just changes how it lives in you. But when you haven't fully processed it, it doesn't disappear. It waits. This is what happens when we don't deal with things and we sweep them under the rug. And then at some point, that rug is going to be a mountain and you can't even get around it. So again, what are we doing here? It waits for the moment to feel familiar. It waits for a situation that looks the same. It waits for someone to hit the same emotional spot. And then it shows up like it never left. And now you're sitting there thinking, I was doing so good. What happened? Life happens. In healing, it's not a straight line. It's not a fix it once and never feel it again. It waves. Some days you're grounded. Some days you're triggered. Some days you feel strong. And some days something small knocks the wind out of you. And none of that means you failed. It means you're still human. But here's where we get it twisted. instead of being curious about the trigger, we get frustrated by it. We say things like, I shouldn't feel like this. I thought I healed this. Why am I still dealing with this? And now you're not just feeling the trigger, you're judging yourself for having it. So now it's double the weight. But what if instead you treated your trigger like information? Not embarrassment, not weakness, information. Like, okay, this still hurts. That still affects me. That part of me still needs attention. Because triggers don't show up to ruin your progress. They show up to reveal what still needs healing. And if you listen instead of fight it, that's where the real work starts. So let me say this one more time. Just because it hurts again doesn't mean you haven't healed it. It just means you're still healing. And that's what we need to understand. And in that sense, how do we pour from an empty cup? Stop pouring from an empty you. You cannot keep being everything for everybody and then wonder why you feel like nothing. Boundaries are not attitude. That's my word, boundaries. Rest is not weakness. And saying no is not selfish. You're overwhelmed because you keep volunteering your peace. Oh my gosh. You cannot keep giving what you don't have. You can't keep showing up for everyone, being everything to everybody, fixing, helping, supporting, listening, because you can't get blood from a turnip. Some of y'all are exhausted, not because life is just so hard, but because you won't stop overextending yourself. You answer every call. You say yes when you mean no. You show up even when you're running on empty. And you call that love? No, that's self-neglect with good intentions. You've made a habit out of putting yourself last, and now you're confused why you feel invisible in your own life. Let's be honest. You don't need more time. You don't need more energy. You need boundaries. And not the cute kind you post online. The real kind. The kind that disappoints people. The kind that makes you uncomfortable. The kind that forces you to choose yourself, even when you're used to choosing everyone else. Because here's the truth. Every time you say yes to something that drains you, you're saying no to yourself. And those little no's, they add up until one day you're tired of everything. Not because everything is wrong, but because you've given too much of yourself away. And now you're running on empty, trying to pour into people who don't even realize you're depleted. Let me say this clearly, loves. Again, rest is not weakness. Saying no is not selfish. And choosing yourself is not wrong. It's necessary. Because if you keep pouring from an empty you, eventually you're going to start resenting the very people you're trying to love. And that's when things get really messy. So instead of asking, why am I so tired? Why do I feel like this? Ask yourself, why am I overgiving? Where am I not setting boundaries? Where am I abandoning myself to keep others comfortable? Because until you fix that, nothing changes. You deserve relationships where you're supported, not just depended on. The check-in you keep avoiding, not with your friends, not on social media, with you. Ask yourself, am I actually okay or just distracted? What am I avoiding feeling? When was the last time I genuinely was at peace? Some of y'all don't need vacation. You just need honesty. No distractions, no scrolling, no noise, just honesty. Because some of y'all stay busy, not because you have so much to do, but because you just don't want to sit with yourself. And I get it. Silence can feel loud when you've been avoiding things. When was the last time you actually checked in with yourself? Not the quick, I'm good. Not the automatic, I'm fine. The real check-in. The one where you don't push past the answer. What am I avoiding right now? What am I pushing down and hoping it goes away on its own? And here's the one people don't like. Where in my life am I not being honest with myself? Because the truth is, you already know. You know what's draining you. You know what doesn't feel right. You know what you've been tolerating. And you've just been avoiding the conversation. And avoidance, it might feel a little easier in the moment, but it always costs you later. It costs you peace. It costs you clarity. It costs you time. And the longer you avoid it, the heavier it gets. So instead of running from it, sit with it. Sit with your thoughts. Sit with your feelings. And sit with the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. Because clarity doesn't come from distraction. It comes from honesty. And honesty might sound like I'm not okay as I've been pretending. I'm tired in a way I can't ignore anymore. I need to make a change. I can't keep doing this to myself. And that moment right there, that's not a breakdown. That's awareness. And awareness, that's when everything starts to shift. When you really look at it, everything we talk about today connects, right? You're functioning, but not healing. You're showing up for everybody else while quietly struggling yourself. You're avoiding the truth and wondering why nothing feels different. And then when someone triggers you, you question your progress instead of realizing there is something that still needs care. And on top of that, you're pouring into everyone else and nothing left for yourself. So of course you're tired. Not just physically, mentally, emotionally. And the one thing that could actually shift all of this, you've been avoiding it. Yourself. The real check-in, that honest moment, that uncomfortable truth you keep pushing off for later. But here's the reality. There is no healing without honesty. There is no peace without boundaries. And there is no change without you finally facing what you've been avoiding. If anything in this episode felt a little too close, then good. That means you heard it. And now the question isn't, did this apply to me? The question is, what are you going to do about it? Take care of your mind like it matters, because it does. And if nobody told you today, your feelings are valid, But avoiding them, that's what's wearing you out. And you've just been out here surviving, not really living. Not for the world, not for your image, but for you. So until next time, protect your peace, your mind, and stop calling survival living, because it is so much more to life than that. Trust me. So I know this episode was a little heavy, but again, if it hurts you, just say ouch. So here at Sassy Speaks, we're going to get you all the way together, but we're still going to laugh, we're going to love, and it's all done in love, trust me. If you just need someone to talk to, I'm here. If you just need someone to listen, I'm here. So email me, Sassyspeakspod at gmail.com, Facebook Sassy Speaks, IG Sassyspeakspod, and tell me how you feeling. Tell me how this episode made you feel. Give me some topics to talk about. I promise we'll lighten it up a little bit the rest of the month of April. But again, this topic is very near and dear to me. So I just wanted to get it out because, of course, it could help someone. So until next week, I'm your girl Sassy. Bye, loves.